Here's something that should immediately break your assumptions. Humans didn't invent money to make trading easier. That's the story everyone gets taught, and it's almost entirely a myth. Economists and anthropologists have spent decades searching for actual historical evidence of the classic barter system, a world where people traded chickens for shoes before coins existed, and they've found something surprising. It essentially never happened at any meaningful scale, anywhere, ever. So here's the real question worth asking. If barter wasn't the starting point, what actually came before money? And how did humans end up inventing something as strange as trading pieces of metal, shells, or paper for food, shelter, and survival itself? The instinctive answer most people reach for is that early humans traded goods directly, hit constant inconvenient snags, and eventually invented coins to solve the problem. That's not what the evidence shows. The real story is stranger, older, and involves something most people never expect. Debt existed before money did, not the other way around. Let's start with the assumption almost everyone carries without examining it. That barter, direct goods for goods trading, was humanity's original economic system. Anthropologist David Graeber, along with decades of prior research by economic historians, found no solid historical evidence of any society that operated primarily through barter before adopting money. What actually existed instead, in small, tight-knit communities, was something closer to an elaborate system of social debt and obligation. If you needed grain and your neighbor had extra, you simply took it, and an unspoken social understanding formed that you owed them something in return, someday, in whatever form made sense at the time. No exact exchange rate, no haggling over chickens versus shoes, just memory, trust, and social reputation functioning as the earliest recorded system of economic exchange. Here's where it gets interesting. This debt-based system worked because everyone knew everyone. Reputation was the currency. If you consistently failed to repay favors, your entire community knew it, and that social cost was often more powerful than any formal enforcement mechanism could have been. The system genuinely didn't need money, because trust itself was doing the job money would eventually do. So then why did money show up at all? This is where the real shift happened, and it connects to something surprisingly specific: strangers. As trade networks expanded beyond small, tightly bonded communities, humans increasingly needed to exchange goods with people they didn't know, would likely never see again, and had no ongoing relationship or reputation system with. Debt-based trust simply doesn't work between total strangers with no future accountability. You needed something else entirely. A way to settle a transaction completely, immediately, with no need for trust or memory at all. This is where some of the earliest known proto-currencies emerge, and one of the most compelling examples comes from cowrie shells. Archaeological and historical evidence shows cowrie shells were used as currency across an enormous geographic range, parts of Africa, South Asia, and China, for thousands of years, in some regions right up until the 19th and even into the 20th century in isolated pockets. Cowrie shells worked as currency for reasons that map almost perfectly onto what economists now consider the core requirements of good money. They were durable, difficult to counterfeit, easily countable, and portable enough to carry across long trade distances. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Grain and livestock functioned as currency long before metal coins existed, and this actually appears in some of the very earliest written records humans ever produced. Cuneiform tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, dating back over 5,000 years, record transactions, debts, and payments denominated in fixed quantities of barley, showing that formalized units of value, essentially an accounting system for tracking obligations, existed well before physical coins were struck from metal. This is a genuinely important detail, because it means writing itself may have been invented partly to track debts and payments, not the other way around, with money emerging as a written and recorded concept before it ever became a physical coin you could hold. Here's the layer that connects it to something even bigger: the emergence of actual metal coinage. The first standardized metal coins most historians point to come from the Kingdom of Lydia, in what's now Western Turkey, around 600 BCE, made from electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver. What made Lydian coins genuinely revolutionary wasn't the material itself. Societies had used gold and silver as valuable goods for a long time. It was standardization. Each coin was stamped with a consistent weight and a royal seal guaranteeing its value, which meant, for the first time, two complete strangers could trade with total confidence without needing to weigh, test, or verify the metal's purity themselves. The government's stamp did the trust work that reputation used to do in small communities. There's a fourth layer worth adding, because it explains why coinage spread so quickly once it appeared. Convenience compounds. Once one kingdom demonstrated that standardized coins dramatically simplified trade, particularly across long distances and with strangers, neighboring civilizations adopted the concept rapidly. Ancient Greek city-states developed their own coinage within decades of the Lydian innovation. The Persian Empire, after conquering Lydia, adopted and spread coined money across a vast territory. Within a few centuries, coinage had become the dominant medium of exchange across most of the ancient Mediterranean and Near East, largely because once strangers could trust a stamped coin without needing to trust each other personally, trade could scale far beyond what reputation-based systems ever allowed. There's a fifth layer worth adding, because coins turned out to have a serious limitation of their own: weight and distance. Carrying enough gold or silver coins to fund a major trade expedition, or to pay for goods across a long journey, was heavy, risky, and an obvious target for theft along the way. China solved this problem centuries before anywhere else, and the solution is genuinely remarkable. During the Tang Dynasty, Chinese merchants began using promissory notes called flying money around the 7th century CE, essentially certificates that could be exchanged for a fixed amount of coin at a specific location, allowing traders to carry lightweight paper instead of heavy metal across long distances. By the Song Dynasty, starting around the 11th century, the Chinese government took this concept further and issued the world's first true government-backed paper currency, called jiaozi. This wasn't just a private merchant convenience anymore. It was an entire state-backed monetary system built on the idea that a piece of paper could represent value, as long as enough trust existed in the institution issuing it. Paper money wouldn't reach Europe in any meaningful form for another several centuries, making China's innovation astonishingly ahead of its time. There's a sixth layer worth adding, because it reveals something important about what actually gives any form of money its value in the first place. Trust in the issuing authority always mattered more than the physical material itself. Whether it was a stamped coin, a cowrie shell, a clay tablet recording barley debts, or a paper note backed by an emperor's government, none of these objects had value because of some inherent physical property alone. A cowrie shell isn't valuable because it's useful. A piece of paper isn't valuable because of the fibers it's made from. Every form of money throughout history has ultimately rested on a shared social agreement that this particular object represents value, backed by some authority or institution people were willing to trust, whether that authority was a village's collective memory, a king's royal seal, or a government's official mint. So here's the reframe. Money wasn't invented to fix an inconvenient barter system that never really existed in the first place. It emerged to solve a much more specific problem. How do you conduct reliable, one-time transactions with people you have no ongoing relationship with, no shared history, and no reason to trust based on reputation alone? Debt and social obligation worked beautifully within tight communities. Standardized currency worked specifically because it didn't require any of that. It replaced trust in a person with trust in a stamped, verified object, and eventually, trust in an institution entirely. And here's the part that connects back to something bigger than economics itself. Every time you tap a card or send a digital payment today, you're participating in the exact same ancient solution, just with a different physical form. You're not trading favors with someone you'll owe forever. You're settling a transaction completely, with a stranger, instantly, using a system built entirely on standardized, verified trust. The same fundamental innovation a Lydian king stamped into a piece of electrum roughly 2,600 years ago, and the same principle a Song dynasty official relied on when issuing the world's first paper banknote 1,000 years ago. The barter economy you were taught about in school never really existed. What actually existed first was something far more human: memory, obligation, and trust between people who knew each other's names. And every coin, banknote, and digital transaction since has simply been a more scalable way of solving that same, deeply human problem.